40 nautical miles. That is the distance between a Ukrainian pilot and the target he just destroyed. 40 nautical miles. The pilot never saw the building. He never entered the threat zone. Russian radar tracked nothing over the target area. Russian air defenses had nothing to engage. And yet somewhere in a Russian-occupied city in eastern Ukraine, a command post ceased to exist with a precision of 33 feet. The battalion commander inside had no warning. His communications went dark. His unit, preparing to advance, had no orders, no coordination, and no chain of command. That is what a JDAM-ER does. And Ukraine just bought 1,500 more of them. In this video, we will look at exactly how a weapon launched from 40 miles away maintains precision that a human sniper cannot match, why Russia's electronic warfare systems cannot stop it, how Ukraine has woven JDAM-ERs into every aircraft in its fleet, and what the arrival of 1,500 new kits means for the Russian spring offensive that is already beginning to fracture under Ukraine's middle-range campaign. But first, let us look at the campaign that made this purchase inevitable. Russia spent years studying Ukraine's vulnerabilities. It tracked Ukraine's air force. It cataloged the loss rates. It observed the drone campaigns. And it drew a conclusion that shaped everything about how Russia organized its forces for 2026, that Ukraine's precision strike capability had a ceiling. A ceiling defined by the range of Ukraine's weapons, a ceiling defined by Ukraine's finances, a ceiling that kept the Russian operational rear, the command posts, the logistics hubs, the ammunition chains, the fuel depots, the repair facilities, the communication networks, effectively safe. Russia built its entire spring offensive around that ceiling. It placed everything it needed to sustain the offensive within the occupied territories, close enough to the front lines to be useful, far enough back to be, in Russia's calculation, untouchable. Ukraine spent 2026 proving that ceiling does not exist. What Ukraine calls its middle-range campaign covers everything from 12.5 to 93 miles behind the front line. That is where Russia lives. That is where Russia plans, resupplies, coordinates, and stages. Ukraine looked at that entire zone and began to hit it systematically. In February, the scale was already significant. By March, middle-range strikes had doubled. By April, they had quadrupled. 4 times the number of strikes against targets that Russia believed were secure. Ukraine's president looked at those numbers and said, "There will be more. This is a priority." Russia has no answer. And now Ukraine is about to receive 1,532 new JDAM-ER kits, paid for with $373 million of Ukraine's own funds, approved by the United States Department of State on the 5th of May, 2026. The ceiling that Russia planned around is about to be lowered onto its head. Until now, Russia could at least argue that the campaign was constrained by numbers, that Ukraine was rationing its precision weapons, that the tempo was unsustainable. That argument is finished. Here is where it gets serious. Understanding why the JDAM-ER is so devastating requires understanding what preceded it. Precision-guided weapons are not new. During Operation Desert Storm in 1991, the United States was already deploying the PAVW-2 laser-guided bomb. And for its time, the PAVW-2 was impressive. A kit strapped to a dumb bomb that followed a laser designator, either from the ground or from an aircraft to the target. More accurate than free-fall munitions. More effective than anything that came before it. But Iraq exposed the PAVW's fatal weakness. Laser guidance needs a clear line of sight. Sandstorms in the Iraqi desert scattered the beam. Smoke from burning oil fields, deliberately set by Iraqi forces, blocked designators. Bombs that were supposed to hit specific buildings started missing. Pilots were taking greater risks to compensate. The technology was degrading in exactly the conditions where it mattered most. The United States Air Force went back to the drawing board. GPS was already orbiting the Earth. A growing constellation of satellites that could tell any receiver on the planet its exact position within meters, regardless of weather, smoke, sand, or darkness. Engineers built a tail kit around a GPS receiver, adding inertial navigation as a backup, and attached a set of maneuvering fins that could steer a falling bomb using that position data. No laser, no line of sight, no weather limitations. The weapon needs only the coordinates of the target and the laws of physics. Testing validated the concept absolutely 450 drops, accuracy within 33 feet, system dependability at 95%. The JDAM was born. The extended range variant added a wing kit that changes everything. When the wings deploy, the weapon becomes a glider. Released from altitude, a JDAM-ER can travel up to 40 nautical miles before impact. 40 nautical miles of silent, unpiloted flight to a target the aircraft never approached. From Russia's perspective, there is nothing to see and nothing to shoot until the impact flash. And then the engineers hardened it further. Russia has invested enormously in electronic warfare. Jamming GPS signals is a cornerstone of its anti-precision strategy. For unshielded GPS receivers, this works. Flood the spectrum with noise, and the weapon loses its fix and goes blind. But a JDAM-ER does not rely solely on GPS. Its inertial navigation system runs in parallel, using accelerometers and gyroscopes to independently calculate position and velocity. If GPS disappears, the inertial system takes over without interruption. Russia pours power into its jammers. The JDAM-ER does not notice. Picture that for a moment. A weapon so thoroughly engineered that Russia's most heavily invested countermeasure, the electronic warfare that has defeated entire categories of Ukraine's drones, simply does not apply. So why does Ukraine need 1,500 more of them? Because the battle happening right now in the occupied territories is not a battle of individual strikes. It is a battle of scale. Ukraine is not trying to destroy Russia one target at a time. It is trying to create a condition in which Russia's entire operational depth collapses under continuous, relentless, precise, and economically efficient pressure. For that, numbers matter as much as capability. Ukraine already knows this weapon works. The track record is extensive and specific. JDAMs have destroyed over 180 important targets in Ukraine so far. In March 2024, they struck Russian rocket and artillery depots in the Kherson Oblast and took out a command post in the same operation with a JDAM-ER fired from a MiG-29. In February 2025, Ukraine achieved something no other military had done, deploying the 1,000-pound variant of the JDAM-ER in live combat, carried by a Soviet-era Su-27, against a Russian target. The weapon worked exactly as designed. Months later, another Su-27 used a JDAM-ER to target a specific building inside a densely packed urban area in the Donetsk region. A battalion command post, taken out with the kind of precision that leaves surrounding structures intact while the target simply ceases to function. These are not lucky shots. This is a demonstrated capability, repeated across multiple aircraft types, multiple regions, and multiple target categories. Here is why that matters at the system level. JDAM-ERs are not limited to one type of aircraft. Ukraine has integrated them across its entire fleet with an ingenuity that has surprised even Western observers. F-16 fighters, of which 87 have been pledged to Ukraine by European allies, with only 4 lost in action, were designed with JDAM compatibility from the factory. The pilots who trained on F-16s trained on JDAMs simultaneously. The weapon is native to that airframe, but Ukraine did not stop there. The Mirage 2005 jets, of which Ukraine has 6, with potentially 20 more coming from France, are also JDAM compatible. And then there are the Soviet platforms. Ukrainian engineers modified MiG-29s to carry JDAM-ERs. There is video from July 2025 over the Zaporizhzhia region of Ukrainian MiG-29s with JDAM-ERs on their pylons heading toward the front. Those bombs struck a Russian military crossing behind the lines. The same was done with the Su-27. A Soviet-era heavy fighter, built to intercept NATO bombers, now carries 1,000-pound GPS-guided munitions against Russian command posts. Think about what that means for Russian air defense planners. They cannot predict the aircraft type. They cannot predict the approach vector. They cannot predict the release point because the release point is 40 miles from the target. By the time a JDAM-ER is in flight, the aircraft that launched it is already banking away, descending to low altitude, and heading home. There is nothing over the target for Russian missiles to engage. The weapon that travels those 40 miles in silence delivers something Russia cannot replace with a press release or a propaganda broadcast. It delivers the message that nowhere in the occupied territories is safe. No building that matters. No facility that supports the offensive. No person who coordinates Russian operations in the rear. And the economics of this message are astonishing. Ukraine paid $373 million for 1,532 kits. That works out to roughly $244,000 per unit when you account for the full package: fuses, software, spare parts, technical support, documentation. For every Russian air defense battery destroyed at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars, Ukraine spends a fraction. For every command post taken out, Ukraine spends what Russia might budget for a single day of operations. Russia's entire economic theory of the war assumed that Ukraine would run out of money faster than Russia would run out of targets. The European Union loan of 90 billion euros, equivalent to around $105 billion, now looks set to clear its last political obstacle. Viktor Orban blocked it. Orban is gone. The money flows. Ukraine's $45 billion budget shortfall narrows. And into that narrowing gap come 1,500 precision kits that generate returns on investment that no financial analyst would argue with. Here is the bigger picture. Russia built its spring offensive around a map that no longer matches the battlefield. The rear that was supposed to be safe is being struck 4 times as often as it was in February. The command structures that were supposed to coordinate the advance are losing facilities to weapons launched from aircraft that Russia cannot intercept, fired from distances that exceed the reach of most short-range Russian air defenses. The logistics chains that feed ammunition to the front are being cut before the shells arrive. Every JDAM-ER that enters Ukraine adds another instrument to a campaign that is already breaking Russian operational coherence. The middle range zone, which Russia treated as a buffer and a staging ground, is becoming a kill zone. Systematic, patient, economically efficient, and growing. 1,500 new kits mean 1,500 more targets that Russia must now worry about at any moment, from any direction, delivered by any one of Ukraine's aircraft types, from 40 miles away, in any weather, through any jamming. Russia planned for a war against a victim. It is fighting a war against an innovator. That is the miscalculation that these 1,500 JDAM-ER kits will make permanent. If you found value in this, subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next.